mass destruction. They just weren't in Iraq.
Okay, so James is talking about the I just noticed the camera was off, so I turned it back on. There was where was I? A quote about Condi Rice quote. The overwhelming, unmitigated disaster and nightmare is that you have this aggressive tyrant in a couple of years, armed with a nuclear weapon, with his history and desire and willingness to use weapons of mass destruction.
It's not just that. He was a psychopath, a sociopath, and a maniac. Okay, go on.
Yeah, so she was saying, you can go to page 350 and look at this quote, and this quote I believe is legitimate, because this was something that she said to the press, so I believe that this was an accurate quote, because you could look it up if you wanted to. He could have looked it up to actually find it. So I don't think it was just fabricated to make certain people look more intelligent than they actually are, or more competent at running the government, or whatever. So I believe she actually said this. And she was talking about how, look, I've been watching this sort of thing for a long time, and I know that, yeah, sometimes people are wrong with projections of when people will get a nuclear weapon or whatever, when they're keeping an eye on things. And believe me, the governments, they're keeping an eye on each other, right? This is their whole game is for foreign policy is what is going on the other side of the fence, right? And so, I mean, they're watching these things, and they have a pretty good idea of who's developing certain things and who's whatever, right? And she's saying, look, some people are projecting that it might be 4 or 5 years from now or whatever, but some are saying 2, and it might be sooner, or it might, and she's saying, I've been watching these sort of things for a long time, and usually it comes in sooner, not later, with this sort of thing. So it's not a good idea to wait, right? And
I don't think so. Now, there was a lot of sympathy or something, almost like identification with Saddam Hussein on the part of full lefties back then. And like I can remember one guy, he had a PhD, and he'd got his MA from Harvard, saying, well, who determines who has the right to have nuclear weapons?
And I used to think that too. I used to think, well, if one is going to have it, then everyone should have it.
And the big problem is, what happened if nuclear weapons had been developed 10 years earlier, in the 30s? Would the same oxymoron have been saying, well, who's to say Hitler shouldn't have nuclear? Everyone should have nuclear weapons and stuff like that.
Well,
and
my
wow, that's a problem.
Is nobody should have them. That's
yeah. The big trouble is these kind of cowboys are the guys that want the biggest guns.
Yeah.
So, and the big trouble is they will use them. Hitler was a mad dog. How about Saddam Hussein? I laugh at the full lefties are going around saying, Bush and company are saying that Saddam Hussein has a alliance with Zawahiri, Al-Qaeda in Iraq. That doesn't make sense, because they're committed to his demise. And, they would never give anthrax to those guys because they're committed to their demise. There's one key assumption there, and that is of Saddam Hussein's rationality. Now check this out for rationality. In the 70s, I believe it was 1974, Saddam Hussein was a Russian ally and cat's paw. And the Kurds were Russian allies and cat's paws. So Saddam Hussein has been slowly aggrandizing power to himself. He hasn't taken over full power officially. But he's taken over power enough so that he sends the army. Where? Into Iraqi Kurdistan. Wow, the things that you can do if you are a Russian ally, you can attack other Russian allies. That is rationality, Saddam Hussein style. Guess what the Russians were thinking? Hey, dude, you can't do that. And we're going to demonstrate that you can't do that by shipping arms to the Kurds through the Shah's Iran. And the Shah's going, alrighty, I'm going to do that. And the next thing you know, 1/3 approximately of Iraq belongs to the Kurds, unofficially. And Saddam Hussein is going, oh, this can't go on much longer. I've got Russian arms. And the Russians aren't just supplying the Kurds with arms and ammo. They're not providing us with the ammo for our Russian arms. I'm in trouble because this is on third. How far is it going to go? So what he had to do with Iran and the Shah is he had to say, hey, what do I have to do to get you to stop this stuff getting transported cross country via Iran? And the Shah says, well, there's a little island in the Persian Gulf we covet, and actually we think that we own it, and you have it illegitimately. How about you hand that over to us? Saddam Hussein had to. That is not rationality. That was absolutely stupid. What he did was he kept on doing stupid things and surviving. He was a survivor, but to a large extent it was luck. And then his luck ran out. Now, weapons of mass destruction. What I was saying before the camera cut out is, police could pull a drug bust. And they could walk into a place, they know people have got drugs. And they can't bust them. Why? These people are smart. And they don't have the drugs on site. But,
it's like
if
us
they've got it in
how they do the drug drops here. They'll have one person that'll put the drugs in a bundle of clothing. Usually it's a bundle of clothing. Or sometimes just an article. It'll be a pocket of something. And then they'll leave it in, like, behind some shrubbery or wherever, right? It's in a different place.
Yeah, I mean, they're not giving it to the world.
There will be somebody watching or who has it, whatever, or who's picking it up. And then they'll leave a bicycle, say, in another place behind some shrubbery or whatever. And I've watched them. I've watched them pick up the stuff, and so it's not only me that's seen them do these things, and so
they're not very subtle about it.
No, they're not.
They're kind of like the Dick Cheneys of drug deals. Okay, it's just
they're like
we're doing this. What are you going to do?
They're really.
They've actually got something happening where they're not scared. I think.
No, there's somebody on the take because if it's obvious for me to see what's going on.
We don't really care about it. It's just there. So
whatever.
Stay off of our property.
Yeah, it's not up to me to bust them. Yeah. I'm not a police officer.
I actually don't believe in busting for drugs anyway. So, anyway, even for dealing. But, maybe for dealing. Once it's legalized. But, Saddam Hussein, back in the day, again, this is one of these rationality things. Politics makes for strange bedfellows. And war being kind of like the extension of politics by other means. Who's that, Clausewitz or something like that? Clausewitz would have said it's a extension of war into the extreme, and it's politics into an even more extreme form. So the way I look at it is, politics makes for strange bedfellows, makes for extremely strange bedfellows when it is extended to war. Now, so what did Saddam Hussein do back in 1991 when he was faced with the Americans opening up their softening up campaign in preparation for their attack on Saddam Hussein? Call it an invasion is ridiculous because at least in the initial stages it was intended to kick Saddam Hussein and the Republican Guard out of Kuwait. So what does he do when the Americans start bombing? The ideal, when you're dealing with an air force and you're starting a bombing campaign, you don't want your bombers facing any trouble or flak or whatever, not flak, that's a bad term, but any trouble from fighters. You want to catch those fighters on the ground. Saddam Hussein knew this was happening. why did he know? The Americans actually were careful. They built up all this sort of stuff. They were telling him, get out, get out. It wasn't a surprise attack. It was the closest thing to the very opposite. So, where did he send them? Where do you think would be a sensible place for Saddam Hussein to send his fighters? He had to send them out of country, someplace. What do you think? He just finished fighting about 3 years before. I think it wound up in 1988. He was fighting the Iranians. But that's where he sent them, at least some of them, to Iran. And the Iranians, from what I know, sent them back, when the time came. So, strange, very strange bedfellows. Now, with the weapons of mass destruction, I was pretty convinced he had a nuclear program. Who does he send them to? Who does he send his nuclear program to? Well, preferably not to the Iranians. They're working on their own. That one might come back to bite him in the buttocks. Saudi Arabia. Yeah, I don't think he'd want the Saudi. The Saudis have a lot of money, and they could do a lot of stuff. And again, it might come back to bite him. Where.
There you are.
And let me think. Jordan. Well, kind of like American allies. That wouldn't be that good. I don't think they'd be that interested with Americans looking over their shoulder in getting some sort of a nuclear program. Let me think. What other? Turkey. Yeesh. That would be problems. I don't think the Americans would be enthused about it at that point in time. They wouldn't be enthused about it any time, really. But they were at least theoretically American allies. And where the hey? Oh, Syria. There's the other place in the world that had a bath party, a Renaissance party. Now, it was run by Alawites, basically Shiites, and Saddam Hussein represented, although in a very secular fashion, the Sunni majority in Iraq. Fellow bath party. I only discovered this year that the Syrians had a fairly serious nuclear bomb project. And the press never really got around to covering it because it ended in 2008. So it survived Saddam Hussein. Now, I understand, I might be the first person to be pointing out that this wasn't the Syrian nuclear program. This was the Iraqi program. So I say all the Iraqis have to do is do what they did with their plane. Just move this, back in 1991, move just across the border, And, they killed at least 2 birds with 1 stone. It pays to have data, okay, faux left-wingers? Don't confuse the truth with the facts. Capital F, okay? Instead of that little saying that I was talking about, some person thought it was really profound. Don't confuse the facts with the truth. Don't confuse the truth with the facts. Get some facts. So I was, incidentally, what ended in 2008 was the Israelis. They did what they did to the Usarak, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, reactor of Saddam Hussein, being provided by those enlightened individuals on their mission civilisatrice, the French, under Jacques Chirac. They were providing the Iraqis, Saddam Hussein, with a nuclear reactor and basically building a bomb. And when I say a bomb, several bombs, presumably, for him. Wow. Okay. Jacques Chirac should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. But the Israelis apparently bombed this thing out of existence in 2008. So, where was it located? In Raqqa. R-A-Q-Q-A, I think is the way it's usually transcribed. All the transcriptions from Arabic into English aren't done very well. Now, and my pronunciation is ridiculous, but if I tried to say that Q the way it's supposed to be said, you'd think I was vomiting, and this is actually very good food. Now, what's the significance about that? When you go a little bit upstream of that, you've got a dam, and behind it, a big lake, as I recall, named after the present dictator of Syria's dad. Okay, Assad, is that his name? Assad Dam, I believe it's called. And the big trouble is, you need a lot of electricity to run a bomb program. And guess what that dam would provide? So it's just across the border. Don't want to exaggerate. It would be somewhat across the border on the Euphrates River. And there you have it. Weapons of mass deception. You full lefties were fooling yourselves.
Yeah,
You
so
intellectually dishonest dingbats.
We were just talking about another book earlier about global warring, about China wanting to put a dam of a major river that's supplying water to India. And it's just interesting to think about these things.
I wish I knew which river it is. If it's the Brahmaputra, that would affect Bengal too. It starts off in Tibet. It's a huge river. I
can't remember offhand. Yeah. Page 351. Al Gore and Ted Kennedy said that the evidence about Saddam as an imminent threat was not convincing. And I don't know, a lot of people went with that. The fact was it was misdirected, and but a threat nonetheless, I will say. So, page 344, this is a Bush Jr. quote. Well, anyway, so he says, "A president likes to have a military plan that will be successful." And honestly, I think that's really what happened with the attack on Saddam Hussein, rather than... Because earlier in the book, I couldn't find which page after when I tried to flip back, but the author was talking about how difficult it is to find individual terrorists hiding in caves all over. There's like hundreds or thousands of caves all over the place. Where are they, right? Which you got to find specific guys so that you can tack the crime on them, kind of prosecute them for whatever they've done, right? And that's a pretty tough battle to fight. So they're going after individual people, so it was easier. I think they somebody needed to pay. When the American people are seeing these towers go down on their own land, and so many Americans dying on their own land, they've been attacked in this way. Somebody's got to be held responsible for it, and there's got to be some payback, or the government is not going to be able to maintain control.
No.
And I think that's what happened.
Rumsfeld.
He wanted a battle he could win, even if he had to somewhat fictionalize one.
Well, they would have fictionalized to a large extent, hugely exaggerated the connection between Al-Qaeda and Iraq.
Yes, and they did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now understand, Rumsfeld. Oftentimes, people who are going to commit a crime, a murder, for example, they'd be talking bad-mouthing people that they don't like. Someone should kill that person. They end up killing them, and they don't wait that long. So Rumsfeld was apparently talking to someone right after 9/11, and all he said was, "Let's take them all down. Let's take down everyone who's causing us a problem." So they used this as a pretext to take down Saddam Hussein. Does that mean Saddam Hussein was not a danger? You full lefties, you've got no clue. When he used an atomic weapon, once he got it, and there are all sorts of Europeans who'd be willing to help him do it, starting with the French, but others as well, Germans. Let's say he bombs the United States. It might be only atomic bombs. The United States would have half an hour to decide who did it and who do we respond to. Like, we don't respond, and and it could be Russia, for example, or we get wiped out and stuff like that. So we've got to take everyone out. And if Russia and we take each other out, then what do the Chinese do? Do we let them take over what's left of us? No, third parties, fourth parties would probably have to get taken out too. Hugely destabilizing. Not just proliferation, but proliferation into such bloody hands, and such bloody hands puppet mastered by this crazy, psychopathic, sociopathic, and maniac brain. That's all I gotta say about that. Go on.
No, that's all I was going to say about the book. I don't like the way he writes. I don't believe that much of it is actually nonfiction. To a large extent, I think it's largely based on conversations between people that I don't think there would be too many witnesses, and I don't think any of them would be recording the stuff. So
He recorded Trump recently. It's
Okay,
actually
that's-
recorded.
Okay.
So I don't know how many times. He
Okay.
claims he's got a lot of stuff
Maybe-
on tape. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Well, maybe that's true.
It might be
I'm
true.
Maybe I'm just. I mean, like I've said, it's not my. It's coming from a different political view than I have. So I'm trying to be objective and fair. I don't care. But I hope you've enjoyed the notes that I took.
There'll be more
And
coming from the same author. I
There will
do
be
want
more
to
coming
mention.
from the same author. We'll be going through probably a dozen books before, and other political stuff before Trump gets reelected. So
I want to say about Bob Woodward.
yeah.
In his defense, yeah, he comes from a different part of the political spectrum. You know, I can't imagine ever supporting the Republicans. If I'd been around starting in 1912 when they started making the big flipperoo, and it's been getting worse and worse ever since, over 100 years. I could have supported the Republicans back in the day when Abraham Lincoln, who was, by relative standards, a lot funnier. So, Bob Woodward's the kind of Republican I respect, because he could see back when Nixon was doing his various dirty deeds and stuff like that, you know, dirty deeds done dirt cheap. Well, some of them weren't that cheap, but I just had to throw ACDC in. But, you know, like Woodward stood up to him. Even more of a hero, although a questionable hero, is Mark Felt, the guy who was Deep Throat, because he was head of the, you know, not titular, but kind of like acting head of the FBI, successor in, not titular, of J. Edgar Hoover, who just died. And, well, if he wasn't a Republican, I'd be absolutely shocked. And he actually stood up to Nixon, and that's what did not happen with Trump. Trump's, from what I can tell, is way worse than Nixon. He should, when he gets, I'm hoping I'm right. Maybe I should be saying when he gets deposed from his little regime and stuff like that, sometime in January, he should be prosecuted again and again and again for crimes committed before he became president, while he was running for president, while president. I'm afraid it'll be for crimes committed after, in that interim period between after he loses the election and actually stands down, and when Biden takes over. Hopefully Biden survives and doesn't get whacked by some crazy militia type like the Proud Boys or whatever, Ku Klux Klan, they're around. So he and of course, you know, the stuff, he should be imprisoned in effect for life, because there'd be just so many convictions, and hopefully they should be done consecutively, so you never have to worry about that idiot getting out of jail.
Well, really, I hope to be able to show how this all happened, how Trump was able to get elected, how why various political leaders around the world saw a weakness that they could exploit in America. And,
one in particular, Putin, but you know.
Well, I'm we'll see. We'll see where this goes. We'll see how much I have time or energy, or I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to upload this stuff due to COVID. So we'll see. We'll see if it even goes anywhere.
He was put in place to ruin America, not make it great again.